So, it's obvious by now there's a bit of controversy in the 14 community. We have those who are just trying to enjoy the content, good on them, and there's the other side who keep banging our heads against an adamantium wall in utter frustration. Based on the recent 7.1 release, which I've already covered, it's unlikely those of us in the latter group are going to see improvements. I certainly don't advise holding your breath. But it's brought about some recurring questions from dissenters. If we hate it so much, why the hell do we keep playing? Why are we still here? And honestly, that's a fair question right now. Reading through the comments, many are saying they've canceled their subscriptions and don't intend to change that until the next expansion drops. With the sort of commitment an MMO requires, that says a lot. Vitriol is at an all-time high. Hell, my last video covering the horrible plot of Living Memory was a little more unhinged compared to most of my content. By the way, I do not apologize for anything I say, but it can misconstrue what this channel is about, so I wanted to discuss this and figure out why so many of us are angry about the current state of FF14. Why no dungeon or raid, no matter the quality, can compensate for the mediocrity we've been receiving. Why the story matters so much and what many of us sincerely hope for in the future, despite the odds. And hopefully this will help bring to light what this channel hopes to accomplish, vindictive as I am sometimes. And obviously, there will be spoilers for 14 at large and especially Dawntrail. And honestly, thinking about it, the issue comes back to the same question again and again. What are we investing in with this game? And what are the payoffs? And most importantly, what are we progressing towards? When you look at the game in its current state, with a storyline critically few were invested in, not A Realm Reborn, not Stormblood had so many people on the verge of killing over from sheer boredom. It was exhausting too, and beyond the point that people's interests circled the drain. And that sort of contentment spread to other aspects of the game. It's hard to kick back and enjoy a dungeon when it's going to circle back to a boring-ass plot you couldn't give a damn about. Like freaking trains. Yeah, we know you don't like trains. Let's be honest, people, Dawntrail wasn't an adventure. It was a chore list your overly controlling parents left for you to handle, and there will be hell to pay if you don't get them done before they get home. Nobody likes doing chores. Nobody's excited to do chores. And if you are, there's a deeper psychological problem I am not qualified to diagnose.
If I see you before you see me, look out.
Best of luck to you. Then there's the characters themselves.
It's that your happiness is my happiness!
Wook being the only person to get more than the bare minimum focus, was hands down the most overbearing main character we've ever had. No other game I've ever played has tried so hard to throw someone in your face and treat them like the greatest invention in gaming history. And no, Wook is not great. She was a Mary Sue. Straight up. I have refrained from using that term for so long. I wanted to focus on the specifics rather than some title we could rag on about. But now, I'm not being subtle. Sure, she was portrayed as inexperienced in the beginning, naive and goofy even. But when the first roadblock to success got in her way, the whole concept was abandoned and she had nothing but a stream of victories under her belt. Wook does virtually everything herself in the end, wins every important fight she gets into. Even when it's established, it's against somebody out of her element. And the only time she's at a disadvantage, like when she gets abducted, not only was that off screen, but it was obviously through trickery, not a real brawl, hardly a sign that she's the one lacking. It was also repetitive, so absurd, it left us wondering what the hell we were even doing there. She didn't need our help to win an important battle. Valigamanda was as close as we got in that regard. And does anybody really look back on that fight as the game's peak? Because I sure as hell don't. And nor did our wisdom prove pivotal in her development. The Secession storyline was tailor-made for her specific personality. There was never a hint of doubt about who was going to win. We were her backup singer, her cheerleader, nothing more. I won't waste more time ranting about Wook. There's a link to an entire video on her issues in the description if you want to know more.
I am the best. Skip it. Fine.
The point is, we were essentially passive observers in somebody else's story, which largely defeats the point of us being involved at all. That's not what we love video games for. Unlike any other medium, games allow us to have a direct part in the narrative. It's a unique and powerful feeling that movies, TV shows, and books can't accomplish nearly as well. The players get to see how their actions carry weight, and discover the consequences when that weight comes crashing down. And better yet, it encourages replay value. After you mess up, you can go back and try a different route, see what other possibilities exist. Or you can try a different combat build, see how that conforms to your playstyle. Dawntrail robs us of that uniqueness completely. Now, other games in the 14 lineup have done so partially. Other characters do get their time to shine, like Alphino coming to terms with his mistakes in ARR. Or Thangrid battling Ranjit while we make our getaway in Shadowbringers. That was a kick-ass fight, I loved that. but never were we relegated to the sidelines for an entire game. Then cue in that our final fight was also interrupted by the furry twat. We genuinely have no impact or involvement in this narrative. This single issue robs people of a huge part of what makes gaming such a unique experience. We are, again, passive observers. Wook is always right, we just support her decisions, not make any ourselves. Wook wins every fight, we support her, blindly. No agency for ourselves. There's no easy way to fix something like that. And certainly not a tiny post-MSQ patch as we saw recently. And don't get me wrong, not everything is to blame on Wook specifically. I mean, she's still a culprit, let's not let her off the hook. Her singular importance in Dawntrail robbed multiple other characters of attention, and the results ruin a great deal of disinvestment I'm talking about. Look at the former Dawn Servant, portrayed as a noble leader and a loving father. Is he though? Look, I enjoyed the guy as rarely as we got to see him, but there are issues here the story does not attempt to rectify. The plight of the Mamul, which I have also spoken of previously, their homeland had suffered economic hardship for centuries. Many were left to engage in warfare just to provide a living, and they turned to Blessed Siblings, a eugenics program that killed 99 out of 100 born in the process. And Golul Jaja did nothing about it. A simple survey with Charlie and Tech was all it took to fundamentally alter this region's potential. And by the way, this whole bit, the Mamul, has no bearing on the challenge. Yeah, this was filler. Horribly written filler. And a game that drags itself out for far too long. It could have been some decent world building, a problem to be established and dealt with later on. But no, they solved the problem and put it to rest in about 30 minutes. It was embarrassing and a complete waste of our time. All this was for, besides making King Furry here look amazing per usual, was to provide a sob story to downplay Bakul Jaja's actions throughout the first half of Dawntrail. And it fails that too, nothing can excuse his behavior, especially releasing Valigamanda in the first place. Why give us this cartoon character of a villain just to force a sympathy arc like this? It's jarring, it's ineffective. So neither Bakul nor Golul Jaja look any better for the storyline. The latter had every means to end the Blessed Siblings dilemma decades ago, and he never did. Think of a story as the vehicle the game runs upon, and your characters are the occupants. It's them we're following, it's them we're invested in, what they're doing, where they're going. When you fail to make that commitment worthwhile, they are no longer worthwhile. This noble king was a poor ruler, why should I like him now? Why should anybody care that he's dead? Bakul is a ruthless monster with no redeeming qualities until you sped rush a redemption arc, just like Golbez. Not to mention he's humiliated at every turn, so he's a horrible person and a complete joke. The latest alliance raids have done nothing to change that. I'm not holding out much hope for the future. You gave us these characters. You insisted that we love them, insisted that we despise them, followed by a demand that we sympathize with them. Yet, you made no effort beyond just expecting us to. We are in this world to experience wonders and to explore unfettered, not to follow a generic set of actions at your whim like rodents in a hamster wheel. So what are we supposed to do? Ignore it? Do we believe whatever the game tells us? That would make us brain-dead automatons. Nobody likes being treated like a drone, least of all in their fantasy game. That is a problem Dawntrail has done nothing yet to remedy, and the people's frustrations reflect that. This doesn't just apply to the characters we're meant to like. Zorolja received such little attention, I would argue Wook's freaking wet nurse got more development than his scaly hide did. It's insane. Firstly, his violent mental state does not reflect well on Golul Jaja. This unstable time bomb grew up under his roof, and nothing suggests Golul Jaja did anything to stem his son's ruthlessness. There's much missing between these two that's needed to understand how Zorol turned out the way that he did. Nepotism can't explain everything, and given they only share one scene together, here where Zorol shanks him, yeah, that's not going to tell us much beyond daddy issues. Face it, Zorol was meant to be a generic antagonist who, like Bakul, had his whole character motivation crammed into the MSQ at the very end of his story arc. It was every bit unsatisfying, and there was plenty of potential worth exploring. Perhaps Golul wasn't such a great father.
I'll be sure to nominate you for Dad of the Year. Don't judge me.
At least to Zorol. He could have been born after the other two were adopted, making him something of a neglected younger child in the family. Or Golul Jaja, overcompensating for Wook and Kona being adopted, inadvertently neglected his biological child, leaving him to develop a militant personality to compensate, to beg for attention, recognition. Simple solutions like these have no business not being included in the work. They're not errors, they're signs of neglect. For the story, for this piece of work. For this piece of work, you and I are paying monthly for. They didn't care to develop this guy, so why would we, the players, be interested? Zorol was a major part of the narrative, and I could not give a damn less. His only remaining characteristic is how much of a threat Zorol was, which, yeah, he one-shots Bakul, kinda neat. Then he loses a fight to an imitation Golul. which is insulting for several reasons, not least the fact that it happened off screen. You couldn't afford another minute of animation, yet douchebags. Then when he faces Wook and loses his advantage, his soul regulator, almost instantly, because a talented warrior like this couldn't possibly guard his weak spot. That's expecting too much. Zorro was a joke at the end too. His boss battle was epic, but that can't save the narrative cesspool that was his character arc. That's about the extent of his usefulness, yet his descent into madness was played as extremely emotional and heart-wrenching. Any interest we may have had in him circled the drain the second the plot required it. Just like with his father and Bakul Jaja, you threw this character in our faces, and then went out of your way to do nothing with him, making it next to impossible to take an interest. I do not buy into his madness or his half-baked desire to start a war, because you didn't earn it. You didn't do anything with it, didn't even try to do anything with it, making all of this a waste of time, a waste of our time. Our intrigue was played for laughs. That tends to piss people off. I'll say it again, nobody wants to be treated like a moron, and this game treated us like morons. Now, this isn't unique to Dawntrail. I've had the same gripes about Endwalker since it ended. Vana was a psychopath who abandoned her entire civilization to a horrifying demise, and Square put her onto a freaking pedestal for us to worship. The only time we get to call out her psycho bitchiness is in optional content, the Omega Beyond the Rift quest, and that was long after everything was said and done, which has absolutely no value where it counts. It's terrible. Now, I'm sorry for recapping issues discussed in other videos, but I'm building towards something very important. When you tell us one thing then give us something completely different, it's impossible to reconcile that. People, individuals, are not stupid. Now, if you put us into groups, that's when we turn to the dumbass side of the force. We individually can use our common sense to tell that there's something horribly wrong with what's occurring before us. So when you half-ass a narrative that you haven't earned, we don't buy it. And guys like me are left ranting about it on the internet because you dillholes didn't do your jobs. And your player base grows frustrated that build-ups and payoffs they have spent considerable time investing in bears no fruit. Your leaders are not worth your affection, your heroes are not heroic, your villains are senseless idiots, because that's what the writing created regardless of your intent. We give you our time, our money, our attention, and this is what we get in return.
Steam! Listen to me!
You're really surprised people are pissed off. But maybe I'm being an ass, per usual. Come on, there's always room for improvement. Patch 7.1 is out.
Not so fast!
Yeah, no. I got an entire video on that, it wasn't good. Relations between Tyrol and Alexandria have a great deal of nuance they refuse to touch on, probably because it's complicated and it'll take too long to explore. Zorro received retro development, only proving how wasted he truly was, and even then it came back to daddy issues. By the way, on the topic of wasted potential, Little Galulja here is another example. We get his origins in 7.1. Now, people have been debating if he was a Zorro clone, which would have been an interesting route, discussing the implications of identity in a world where memories are deemed indistinguishable from the self. I had personally theorized he might have come from another world, a reflection of Zorro himself, perhaps, thanks to experimenting with the interdimensional key. I still believe this thing is going to be a major focus moving forward. Square would be astronomically stupid not to use it. So getting some early development in how the key works and the moral repercussions of using it would be nice. And it would provide fascinating storyboarding for Little Galul here, a kind of parallel with Crowl, you know? There were many routes to consider. But no, he's just Zorro's son, birthed from the only female Mamulsha in the whole nation of Alexandria, a woman who simped so hard for that lizard D, she willfully engaged in unethical experiments that would have her tried as a war criminal. Yeah, keep traumatizing a kid like this, he's gonna become a Batman villain. Or maybe Batman himself? You know, criticism aside, I'd watch that movie, no lie. And then Kona. I'm gonna need to think up some new insulting nicknames for this boy, I swear. A tech genius with a grand vision for his country, staunch, dependable. Now he's deluded to a sad little orphan who's got a hard-on for Fantasy Buffalo. Yeah, that's what they did with him. Sweet holy hell. Also, this dumbass moment where he could have done any number of intelligent gamer moves, but chose instead to just stand in the way. Guess who ends up saving the moron?
Kona! Are you alright?
We're tearing other people down to make her look better. The situation is not improving. It honestly killed any interest I had in seeing more from Kona. All these characters were treated like bad jokes. They're handled with mediocrity, plot points with multiple directions that could be explored, and time again, the writers chose the safest, blandest, and most unoriginal route imaginable. Gululja's simp of a mother was but one failure, Kona was another. And there's no solid reason why. I've admitted it myself. Dawntrail had a lot of compelling ideas to explore, and the development team has done nothing with them, repeatedly. And the many players who are expressing frustration right now have been waiting for literal years to see their favorite game kick off a new story. And this unfettered compost is what they get for their patience. People out in the wider world have better things to do, and garbage like this only motivates them to focus on those instead. This is a rich, multifaceted world at your disposal. There are limitless surprises to spark people's intrigue. I have suggested but a mere few. There's no excuse for your story to be this boring, this often, this egregiously. Even the setting is moronic. Reflecting back on living memory for a moment, you know how inept us shutting down the terminals was for a multitude of reasons? Please consider, had these terminals possessed even basic password encryption or keycards, any form of security, the entire final zone of 7.0 couldn't have happened. The Garleans knew to have laser gates and keycards to access different areas. That alone is far more efficient than anything living memory had. When the most basic common sense security disrupts your narrative thus barring its inclusion, it's time to consider that you're producing pure, unmitigated garbage that needs to be erased from existence.
The access code is... access code.
Oh, you've gotta be fucking kidding me.
Bitch about it later.
There's no excuse, not budget shortages, not novice writers, not them trying to paint the idea that Alexandria was lackadaisical with its security thanks to centuries of relative peace. These people are incredibly sheltered from life's hardships, let's not lie, but not so much that installing password protection is too far-fetched to consider. It's ridiculous. This was meant to be the finale, the very thing we were building towards the whole game, and it fell shorter than Valtteri at a Mr. Universe competition. Hey, his transformed version does not count. He didn't work for it. Just what the hell were they thinking? Who possibly thought that more standing around and talking was in order after an entire game's worth of standing around and talking? Without any opposition or threat to our progress, it made for such a lackadaisical journey that it not only cured my insomnia, it forced me to purchase a damn treadmill to jog on while playing the game just to keep me from flatlining out of sheer boredom. Now, sure, the dimensional fusing was meant to be the threat, the motivation, but that was ruined by nobody reflecting on it. We don't express concern or feel pressed for time in living memory. And hell, we wasted time reenacting a cringeworthy theater play right before deleting the spectators from existence. That is the definition of pointless, people, and hardly content worthy of an action-oriented RPG. So, we had a world-ending threat we don't touch base on, nor are we particularly proactive in dealing with it. We acted nonchalantly about an impending calamity on our doorstep. That's hardly in line with our character. Nor was he racing all these people with barely a second thought, but I've beaten that dilemma over everybody's heads enough times. This was the game's finale, the climax. It's where all the narrative buildup is meant to finally pay off. And we got slow-ass pacing, nonsensical actions, questionable choices with extreme impacts that are downplayed to the extreme, not to mention this place was gorgeous before. Now it's bland and depressing, not even fun to explore anymore. We got genuinely nothing out of this zone except how to fall asleep in our chairs at different angles. You kickstarted your game by boring us, and you ended your game by boring us. The only real question to ask is, what is the defense? What do people keep saying? To be patient. There's new writers involved. They need time. Be patient. Give it time. Funny, I remember similar arguments after Endwalker. A decade of development had concluded, terribly, and a new arc was set to begin. New lands to explore, new adventures. Just give it time, you'll see. Then we got the Void mini arc with Zero and Golbez. It was alright at first, kind of petered out towards the end. They rushed Golbez's redemption arc, and it was hardly believable. And Zero Mist was hardly a worthwhile final fight thanks to previous encounters that were far more dangerous, which we overcame despite the absurdity of it. Not to mention, none of this translated into Dawntrail in the slightest. So we can argue as of now that all this was pure filler while the new expansion was being worked on. It could come into play one day, sure, but for now, it's just filler. Meaning for the time being at least, everything we did in post-Endwalker also has very little purpose. Our time with Zero, Golbez, the Elemental Fiends, they added nothing to the larger narrative, thus our commitment to those story patches feels even more wasted. And again, they said, wait for it. A new expansion is coming. It's gonna be amazing. A fun adventure without any of that end-of-the-world nonsense buggering the script. Then we got Dawntrail. We already know how that went. And yeah, they gave us another end-of-the-world scenario, after promising a damn beach episode for an expansion. Lies and Mediocrity, the sequel. And freaking again, they said, wait for it. It's a new expansion. It takes time to build up a storyline. Give it time. And now 7.1 is out. Again, they say, wait for it. These are post patches. They're meant to be small. These patches can't give a satisfying experience on their own. Give it time. Your story is lame, the characters are pointless, and it's becoming abundantly clear none of the Dawntrail cast will be joining us in the future. There's only one hopeful in that regard, and a great many people aren't interested. So everything happening now will have next to no impact on future events. Dawntrail is slowly turning out to be filler material, just like the Zero arc and post-Endwalker, and people are bound to start wondering why we wasted a whole expansion here if none of the people and none of the events are meant to do more than set the stage for future content. And let me just say it here and now, the Scions have kind of ran their course. Not all of them. Newer additions like Grawha and Astidian are great. And Crowl, for God's sakes. There's potential in keeping them, but some others who've been around since ARR, the game could use a revamp to our main cast. Dawntrail does not count. You all know better. I know I've expressed frustration at them not being utilized in 7.0, but that's because the Scions were there, present, and they didn't do anything. Most of them could have been cut out and we'd lose nothing of substance. So not only are we wasting time in Dawntrail, but we're going to be stuck with the same people again in the next story arc. This was the perfect opportunity to mix up the roster and make room for new characters in the main party. Instead, we got Wuklamah, the video game. People's investment, zero net gain. At least give us a time skip of several years between games so the Scions have time to change and mature a bit. Let the twins finally grow into proper adults. It's high time they digivolve beyond their rookie forms. Let the others pursue personal interests, creating new avenues for development before throwing them back into the narrative. You have options. Use them already. Here is the ultimate answer to why people are pissed off. Again and again and again, they're told to be patient. They've been told to be patient basically since 6.0 ended. That was 3 years ago, folks. And the next expansion is what, another 2 years out? That seems to be the pattern. That's 5 years for this world we've all come to love to get its mojo back. That's a long time to wait for somebody else to make your commitment worthwhile.
There's nothing's gonna stop us now!
Oh, fuck, dead!
Some people don't give a damn about the story. That is fair. No harm done. Just enjoy the dungeons and whatnot. But for others, that's easier said than done. Especially for 14, which has a heavily story-driven gameplay style. What happens once the dungeons are figured out and the thrill of fresh content dies out? Content may keep people around for the gear grinding and networking, but the real investment for many is in knowing the world we're experiencing is heading places we're going to enjoy. Struggles and trials, moments of levity, a kick-ass soundtrack, and people are being forced to wait multiple years to get a proper dose of any of that. Now, I'm not a complete pessimist. Yeah, okay. Shut up, I mean it. Really, I'm not convinced it's all downhill from here. In truth, I've been in this situation before. The tail end of Stormblood, I was bored. Not Dawntrail levels bored. It was nowhere near that bad. But it was generic. I wanted to know more about the Ascians and Zodiark. And we got a struggle against an evil empire. I think every main installment in Final Fantasy has an evil empire. And it was a struggle that was cheapened by the twist that the Garleans were just pawns in the Ascians' agenda. Knowing that we wasted a whole expansion fighting a mere patsy rather than the true threat, it severely damaged my interest in 14. It was only the plotline of the Scions being rendered comatose one by one, and the promising Shadowbringers trailer that kept me around. Fortunately, that game revitalized my love for this series. Was it perfect? Oh hell no. That stupid Talos side quest will go down in history as a top 5 dumbass moves in 14's history. Hours building this automaton to access the rest of the area map, just so this "I'm not allowed within 500 feet of schools" creepster could kick it into oblivion. What? He was chasing a little girl across a continent. He fits the profile. All of the expansions have their problems. I have not, nor will I ever claim that any of them are flawless, but none have as many issues as often and obvious as Dawntrail does. Regardless, I do believe things can bounce back. That's what I solemnly hope these videos can inspire. They can't single-handedly change the course of the series. I'm just a little guy, barely getting his footing on this platform. But with other voices raising hell and you folks joining in the fray, I do hope we can get these douchebags' attention long enough to course correct this mess. It's a long shot, but I want to get that sensation back. Of feeling excited to log in knowing there'll be genuine twists and turns in MSQ, to make new friends and allies knowing that some of them won't be around when it's over, instead of the infallible Disney Pro tag we got in Dawntrail, instead of a literal world of possibilities circling the terrain in favor of generic nonsense nobody cares about and nobody asked for, instead of being told year after year to be patient and just let us eat, damn it. The potential is already there, I've said as much. Now, it's why I turn these rants into rewrites. like with the Rite of Secession and Living Memory. Those are just two angles. There are other plots and characters that can be improved upon. And we've worked towards alternate routes to spice up the story without deviating from the intended ending, to keep in line with the original concept. Dawntrail had some good ideas. They were just terribly executed, or completely ignored. And I, along with an increasing number of others, are fed up with being told it isn't that bad, and it'll get better eventually. And if you don't like it, just don't play. None of that solves the problems we're talking about. That's precisely what people are looking for, that I stated at the start. Investment and progress. We're not getting any of that. Exactly how long does this have to go on for before it's acceptable to stop and say, "Oi, you're delivering a sack of fecal matter that would rival Disney Star Wars' narrative retardation. Maybe cut it out and get back to the good stuff." You have the right setup. You have a variety of ways to pull it off. There's no excuse besides apathy. And that's the one thing I don't want to become. Apathetic. I may be a jerk. I may be unhinged. But apathy? I don't want to not care about this game, this world. There's a lot of cool stuff here. Some of my favorite gaming moments have happened right here in 14. Some inspiring characterizations Hollywood ought to take notes from. Sacrifice, hardship, perseverance, and the catharsis you receive when it all pays off in the end. No amount of manufactured drama, no shallow feel-good moment can compare to that feeling. That's real-life magic, folks. That's what I want to see. So, sparing my usual outro, we've a special announcement. In a plot twist rivaling anything Dawntrail has produced, this channel is about to pass a milestone. Our first 1,000 subscribers.
Oh, well now you're just bragging. What's important to me, asshole?
Yeah, I know it doesn't sound like a lot, but for a guy who never saw himself starting a YouTube channel, and only did so because of how much his favorite game was pissing him off, it's a pleasant surprise. And I'm immensely grateful to all of you for the support and helping this channel grow. I'll have to think of something special to do, maybe a question and answer video. You guys can ask about whatever you want in the comments, make your own observations, and I can share and discuss some of them in detail. Something like that. Leave your thoughts below if that sounds like fun. And thank you again. This was one hell of a Christmas gift. And don't think I've forgotten about my Endwalker content. With Dawntrail hype settling, I'll be focusing on that game again here real soon. Subscribe if you'd like to see more, and I'll see all you guys in the next one. Till then.